So what I'd like to do before I actually start my thing is that it's all about field intervention. And in this hour, we're going to begin to define perhaps what the field is. And so you felt different, when you did the babble, then you felt different when you did the breathing. And then some of you, we put little patches on, and someone's got their feet on a grounding pad. So just as a real quick check-in, would you start? Because what's your name? Ham. So I asked Ham, what, if anything, she noticed because she's standing on the grounding pad. And your story is, let me just turn this thing on. Is that right?
Thank you. So coming over here today, I said, oh man, I wish I'd have brought some ibuprofen because I had this headache that was massive. The adjuster.
A little bit.
But I had this massive headache, and I had this knot in my shoulder, and all week long, I've been like, I need to get to the chiropractor. I need to get to the chiropractor. And I've just had one of those weeks that I couldn't get there, and I honestly have no headache, and my knot is gone. And I also have no cartilage in my knees, so my knees always hurt. But I went up and down the stairs, and they didn't hurt. So it's pretty amazing. Like, I wasn't expecting this, but it's really cool.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Anyone else? No. Anyone else have anything to share about how they feel different? Patches. We put patches on before, after. Everyone's good. Did you feel different?
Yes.
You want to just real quick?
Yeah. So is that right? Before you interrupt me, I don't like being interrupted. But yeah, I had lower back pain, and 2 years ago I had a car accident, so I've been suffering from very similar headache, kind of dizziness, and I've been to acupuncture, which helped within 2 sessions early in the summer, but then I stopped. So once you put this patch on my hand today, there is nothing. I'm rolling my shoulders, not my shoulders, I'm rolling my neck, and my lower back pain was the first thing that went away.
Oh, this is great. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? And one more time, and then we'll stop it.
I have to agree with you exactly that the same thing. I have backaches, it's arthritis, and I feel so much better right now. And then I got some wonderful healing water, and I would like to have more of this.
Okay, thank you. All right. So for those of you that weren't here earlier, we're neuroscientists, and this is neuroscience patches, and they send a signal to the brain, and they block pain in 80% of everyone, and it's just dramatic. And so I'm really glad. Thank y'all. And we pass those out because we just don't want you to have any discomfort, and that's really, really important to us. Your comfort is very important to us. My turn. How does this work? Oh, there we go. So let's do this one more time. All right, so let's do it together. So, but then why? And then kind of read what happens, right? So let's clap our hands one time. That is an anomaly. Clap twice. Right? That is an event. 3 times. That's a pattern. Now, 3 times, 3 times. That's a system. And so in systems thinking, change can only occur from outside the system, from the field intervention. And the babble that we did was, you all noticed the field, what was different and how you felt a part of the group. And then the breathing. What you did is you changed the heart rate variability within your heart, which is the largest electromagnetic field. And as Teresa said, that's 30 feet away. With magnometers, they can measure that. So that puts it a whole different game about what are we responsible for, and then how can we create our own reality. So I'm going to just keep backing up so I don't block anything from the side. Teresa, heart focused breathing.
Okay, let's try the heart focused breathing again.
And Vlad would like you to stand up. Yeah, thank you.
Get comfortable in your chair. Plant your feet on the ground. If it's available, close your eyes to minimize distraction. Bring your awareness to your heart, the physical place in your body where your heart resides. Just left of center. You might find it helpful to put your hand there. It's your choice. Now let's bring our attention and our awareness to our breathing. Feel as if your breath is coming from that place in your heart. Notice the inhale. Let go of the exhale. Now remember a time when you felt deep love and appreciation. Grow that feeling in your heart. Make it bigger, that love and appreciation. Have it fill your body. When you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Thank you, Teresa. So that's field intervention. Oh, my story. So when I was 5 years old, Vladimir asked me to tell the story, so I'm going to tell the story. So when I was 5 years old, I distinctly remember my first conscious thoughts. Who am I? Why am I here? Where do I come from? Where do I go when it's finished? Why am I only aware of myself as being me when I know I'm everyone? And why do I feel so small when I know that I'm so much greater? I never wavered in my life. And that whole journey, my life has been that journey. And the reason that it's a little emotional for me right now is I've never told this story publicly as I'm speaking to you right now. And so, like all good hippies in my day, we found our way to India. And I was really fortunate enough to have met a very wise man, and he taught me a few things that guide my life every day. And I learned a particular sadhana, a particular dharma, and that is truth, simplicity, and love. And that the universe is created from truth, so if we're truthful to ourselves and to each other at all times, that develops our mind. And love develops our heart. And willpower develops the ability to combine the heart and the mind together as one. So the way that we develop willpower is that we live in a very complex world. So always choose simplicity. So it's the Sadhana Dharma, which is truth, simplicity, and love, Satchila, Sarala, and Prem. And that's been the guiding force of my life. And I lived in India and worked in Africa, and I have many stories about that, but what I want to bring it to right now is one time a friend of mine, we lived in the Himalayas, and one time a friend of mine brought a really powerful telescope about this big around and about that long and set it up in the garden. And one night, my friend says to our teacher, "Hey, Baba, look through it." So our teacher looks through it, and he's looking up in the stars, and my friend says to him, he said, "Is there life on other stars and planets?" And immediately my teacher says, "If there weren't for life, there'd be no stars and planets." Right? And that simple thing right there was a huge understanding in my life. And my journey goes on, and I really begun to understand that we live in a highly interactive field. Even though it seems like empty space, but we pray, right? We have desires, we consciously intend, we unconsciously intend. Something is occurring. So that became my driving force, is how to begin to navigate this field that I live in. And today I no longer ask, who am I? It's the inquiry is, what am I? And what I'm going to offer now are some, I think important for myself, some navigational clues I hope that you'll find handy to begin to navigate this invisible field that we live in. All right, so those of you that are familiar with Lagrange, I put this up here because this is a particular very advanced form of geometries. And what happens is that the logo for integral yoga is, it looks like it's a pyramid, a triangle facing down, and another triangle, like Star of David type of look. But the truth of it is, it's three-dimensional. It's not a flat subject. It has another, it's three-dimensional. It's got shape. And that's what this point is here. If you look at it, you'll see it jump, that it's a three-dimensional model. And then inside that model, you will see the square, and then all the other geometries are contained within that. And so the biggest mistake that we make, I believe, is that we feel that we perceive, we've learned, it's just who we are as human beings. We've learned to believe that the space between us is empty when it is filled with highly charged interactive energy. And if you wanted to look at it from the atom, but I'll tell you, the atom is nothing compared to the hydrogen molecule. I mean, it's just, hydrogen's the first element ever created, and everything comes from hydrogen. And water, and what Teresa was speaking about earlier, that the mitochondria take near-infrared sunlight at about 800 nanometers, and they split hydrogen from H2O oxygen, and they release electrons, and that's chemically called ATP, and the electrons line up on the inside of the cell, and as they flow across to the positive, across the cell membrane, it creates electricity. And everything comes from that. Every thought, your ability to see and hear and to think. All right, so the best way to really begin now this conversation is from a Rumi quote, and that is, "Behind every atom of this world hides an infinite universe." These next few minutes, the best way that I thought of that we could really do big chunk, so we're big chunk models, right? We're going to take a model of this and a model of that science, and we're going to combine them for you, top of the pyramid, and connect some dots so that you can come to your own conclusions. Now, so what happened when I came back from India? There were a couple of things that happened for me. One is I got very, very sick. And it was a medical mystery, and I found my way into, I was teaching, because of my background, I started teaching sacred geometry in the 80s. And at the same time, I was getting very, very sick. And I found my way, because I had entry into a certain way of thinking in communities of people. I was introduced into these German docs that were coming over in the 70s and 80s and bringing in what's called German biological medicine. And that's where what you hear today is functional and integrated medicine, it came from Germany. And then the interesting part of it, the Germans got it from the Chinese. So it just keeps going, these ancient systems. But so the field of singularity, right? So what we perceive that we're dual, right? That's the thing. We perceive that we're dual when we know that we're not from the deepest place of ourselves. So what is the process by which that happens? Why do I perceive that I'm dual when there's a field of singularity, right? D-U-A-L, dual, two, right? So, some of the great teachers have said that the first thought of God is I and the second thought is thou. And some people, some teachers would go as far as to say, which I fully adhere to, is that that the mind is the ego, that the ego is like the thief who dresses as the policeman that goes out to look for and to arrest a thief. Meaning that we believe that we have to do something to change. We have to do something to improve ourselves so that we can be one with our source. When the truth of it is, we are one with our source. So it's that ability to perceive at that level. So the field of singularity, like the field of non-duality. So electromagnetic waveforms, they create pattern, proportion, and spin. Everything in the universe is made of waves that become electrons and protons and peoples and galaxies. The universe is organized as three-dimensional, right? It's not flat, it's three-dimensional. And it spins in the ratio of what's known as the golden mean. Sound, who has sound that's important in their life? Chanting, kirtan, bhajan, right? Music, sound healing, creational stories. And God spoke, and the Hopis and the Navajo will sing it into creation. So what is that, right? Whoops, I'm going to go back. So also, along the way, another clue. And it's a Japanese Buddhist mantra, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Right? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And the first thing I did when I heard that from people that I really respect, I wanted to know what the translation was. And the translation, there are many translations, but the translation that speaks to me the deepest is that the mutual experience of life at each moment and all phenomena, right? The mutual experience of life at each moment and all phenomena. Now, coming from my inquiry that happened when I was 65 years ago, I went, okay, I'm paying attention to this. So I reverse engineered it. I went, well, what does that really mean? And what I concluded was, there's only one life. Right? And that life is having a mutual, simultaneous experience with everything. And then we can take that conversation for myself back into the Himalayas when if there weren't for life, there would be no stars and planets. And then we can take that into some of these other ancient teachings which speaks about the unity of all things. So this right now is a film that we would like to demonstrate for you. Just hit the clicker again. All right. Oh, I have to hit it here? Okay. So just enjoy this. There's going to be like 3 films, so it'll be pretty short. Maybe not.
I'm a creative technologist, and the focus of my work is on public installations. And one of my driving passions is this idea of exploring nature and trying to find hidden data within nature. And it seems to me that there's this latent potential everywhere, all around us. Everything gives out some kind of data, whether it's sound or smell or vibration. And through my work, I've been trying to find ways to harness and unveil this. And so this basically led me to a subject called Cymatics. Now, Cymatics is the process of visualizing sound by basically vibrating a medium such as sand or water, as you can see there. So, if we have a quick look at the history of Cymatics, beginning with the observations of resonance by Da Vinci, Galileo, the English scientist Robert Hooke, and then Ernest Chladni. And he created an experiment using a metal plate covering it with sand, and then bowing it to create the chladni patterns that you see here on the right. Moving on from this, the next person to explore this field was a gentleman called Hans Jenny in the 1970s, and he actually coined the term cymatics. And then bringing us into the present day is a fellow collaborator of mine and cymatics expert, John Stuart Reed. He's kindly recreated for us the chladni experiment. What we can see here is a metal sheet, this time connected to a sound driver and being fed by a frequency generator. And as the frequencies increase, so do the complexities of the patterns that appear on the plate,
Good.
as you can see through your own eyes. So, what excites me about cymatics? Well, for me, cymatics is an almost magical tool. It's like a looking glass into a hidden world, and through the numerous ways that we can apply cymatics, we can actually start to unveil the substance of things not seen. Devices like the cymoscope that you can see here are being used to scientifically observe cymatic patterns, and the list of scientific applications is growing every day. For example, in oceanography, a lexicon of dolphin language is actually being created by basically visualising the sonar beams that the dolphins emit. And hopefully in the future we'll be able to gain some deeper understanding of how they communicate. We can also use cymatics for healing and education. This is an installation developed with school children where their hands are tracked, and it allows them to control and position cymatic patterns and the reflections that are caused by them. We can also use cymatics as a beautiful natural art form. This image here is created from a snippet of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony playing through a cymatic device. So it kind of flips things on its head a little bit. And this is Pink Floyd's machine playing in real time through the cymatic. We can also use cymatics as a looking glass into nature, and we can actually recreate the archetypal forms of nature. So for example, here on the left we can see a snowflake as it would appear in nature, and then on the right we can see a cymatically created snowflake. And here's a starfish and a cymatic starfish, and there's thousands of these. So what does this all mean? Well, there's still a lot to explore. It's early days and there's not many people working in this field. But consider for a moment that sound does have form, and we've seen that it can affect matter and cause form within matter. Then sort of take a leap and think about the universe forming, and think about the immense sound of the universe forming. And if we kind of ponder on that, then perhaps cymatics had an influence on the formation of the universe itself. And here's some eye candy for you from a range of DIY scientists and artists from all over the globe. And cymatics is accessible to everybody, and I want to urge everybody here to apply your passion, your knowledge, and your skills to areas like cymatics. And I think collectively we can build a global community, we can inspire each other, and we can evolve this exploration of the substance of things not seen. Thank you.
So all known things have a basic patterns called the Platonic Solids. And then everything builds from the Platonic Solids, which are these shapes, these fundamental shapes. But when you look at atoms, it's the way atoms are shaped. When you look at molecules, it's the way molecules are bonded. When you look at compounds, it's the way compounds. If you're into organic chemistry, it's the way it all creates. And so the next is a demonstration of that, how these shapes, it's not like there's this shape and that shape. This is fractal implosion going all the way back into singularity and stillness. Awesome. Awesome. Right. So this is a peek into this that separates us, right? That we perceive that separates us. That we perceive that separates us. One of my favorite components, right? So there's pattern. We've just showed you how sound creates pattern. Now there is proportion or ratio. And there is a ratio and a proportion which is 1.618. So that just means that 1 and you add 0.618 onto it and it creates this amazing number. There's no other number on the planet like it. And it is the number that allows all sustainable life to be everywhere that there's known sustainable systems. It was first discovered, 1600, Leonardo Fibonacci. And what he noticed was that the first branching on the mugwort plant was 1, and then it branched, and the next place you'll see it, there are 3 branchings, and the next place you'll see it, there's 5, and so forth, all the way to you come to the top, and there's 13 flowers at the top. And that's now known, it's this famous ratio known as the Fibonacci sequence. But what does all that mean? It just simply means that and this is a way this is a way that I navigate life. I make business decisions. I make life decisions on this. So there's the ratio that we can talk about it as far as body proportions, but I think a really good way to demonstrate that is that, so there is no zero, right? Zero is an Arabic concept, right? There is no zero. So there is 1. Life begins at 1. So life only has to know where it is and what came before it. Okay? Just be with me here. So you only have to know this thing. You only have to know where you are now and what happened before. And when you combine what happens before with where you are now, you'll automatically go to your next step. All right? So life, 1, it starts at 1, and what comes before it is 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. So the move is to 2, right? So standing at 2, what comes before 2? 1. So 1 and 2 is 3. The move is to 3. Standing at 3, what comes before it? 2. 3 and 2 is 5. Move to 5, and what comes before it? All right, 3, right? 3 comes before it, so you move to 8. Standing at 8, what comes before 8? 5. 13, 21, 34, boom. And it goes, that number will always be able to do that all the way into infinity. So when you get up into 21 and 34, when you divide 21 into 34, you get 1.618. Right, so the ratio is everywhere. Now that we've spoken about that a little bit, I'm going to just demonstrate that with the next slide, the next presentation. So it's known as the divine proportion, Leonardo Fibonacci. When you see Leonardo da Vinci's famous picture, the Vitruvian Man squared in the circle, and you notice these lines on him, if you understood the code, then that is all of this 1.618 proportion. It creates if in order for life to be sustainable, it has to meet this, right? So there's all these there's all type of conditions out there aberrant, but when these conditions line up in the sustainable system, then we have life, biological life. By the way, I believe for myself, there is a non-biological life and a biological life. I just want to make that distinction. So I believe life is both biological and non-biological. And the mistake that I've made in my life is thinking that I have made is in believing that life is only biological life, right? There's something else happening. So sustainable systems, and now we can apply that to our hand, and what will happen, the hand measures 1, and then from the hand to the elbow, you add 1, right? So this is 1, and this is 1.618. and this is 1, and this is 1.618, and I'll go through the whole thing and break it down for you. But this system can all the way translates into the DNA. And on the DNA, when the spiral makes one complete turn, right? So you can see this over here, and it goes over, and it ratchets around. When it makes one complete ratchet, that ratchet is measured in angstrom units, and that's 34 angstrom, and it's 21 angstrom units wide, and you divide 21 into 34, and you get 1.618. And everything is like that. Every tree, every plant, your entire body, the width of your teeth, your nose, your eyes, and this next film will demonstrate some of that.
The sequence begins with the numbers 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and continues indefinitely. Each number is obtained by adding the last 2 digits together. If we were to take a perfect or golden rectangle, break it down into smaller squares based on Fibonacci sequence, and divide each with an arc, the patterns begin to take shape. We begin to see Fibonacci's spiral. The spiral in and of itself is insignificant. Its importance is revealed in where we find it. Take, for example, the sunflower. The display of its florets are in perfect spirals of 55, 34, and 21. The sequence of Fibonacci. The fruitlets of the pineapple create the same spiral based on the sequence. The pine cone does the same. As currents move through the ocean and the tide rolls onto the shore, the waves that bring in the tide curve into a spiral that can be mathematically diagrammed onto a plot at the points 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and 55. Buds on trees, sand dollars, starfish, petals on flowers, and especially the nautilus shell are formed with this exact same blueprint. With each segment of growth, the nautilus adds to itself one more value on Fibonacci's scale. This blueprint can be seen around us on a small scale every day, but the greatest example of all is directly above our heads. At an average of 100,000 light years across, even the spiral of the galaxies above us are formed with the exact design that the tiny shell is formed. This sequence or blueprint appears to be the trademark of a designer.
And one of the really interesting things when we speak about the nautilus shell, even though you've got that golden mean spiral, but the chambers of the nautilus shell are expanding in volume by 0.618 greater than the chamber that came before it. So that's why the chambers become larger, right? And there's just so many illustrations of the Fibonacci, and we'll have this posted, and you can always, it's a very, very big field of study right now, and it can apply to anything that you have an interest in because it's the blueprint of creation. Well, the golden mean, or the Fibonacci ratio that governs spin. So remember, there's pattern, there's ratio or proportion, and then there's spin. Now, spin is happening everywhere. Like atoms are spinning, molecules are spinning, our planet is spinning, and it's spinning around the sun, and the sun is actually spinning in the galaxy, and the galaxies are coming together and they're spinning in universes, and so everything has spin. Atoms, hurricane, galaxies, it doesn't just circle around, and this is a demonstration of that. And water has spin. About 80%, 78%, 80% water. So why is water spin important to us in this conversation? Victor Schellberger's amazing story. he was a genius in his day. And he comes onto the scene in post-World War II Germany. And Hitler is cutting down the Black Forest, wants to float timber down the Rhine to fuel the factories. And it floats everywhere. Logs float everywhere in the world, but they didn't float in the Rhine. They would just sink to the bottom. Like, why is that, right? So they bring in Victor Schellberger. And Schellberger goes, well, it doesn't have surface tension. And it doesn't have surface tension because the Rhine had been straightened for navigation. So all the natural twists and turns that would normally create vortexian spin were eliminated. So Schellberger came in and he engineered man-made eddies so that the water would come down and it would spin and it would spin. And so it got the surface tension back, and the rest of it's history. So when you see this is the geometry of the atom, right? And it's really the atom that makes our water. And so when the atoms come together in our water to form what we're drinking, they have a particular geometry if it's had proper spin to it, right? But when water goes through the sewage treatment plants a few times, or it gets going through a piping in our house and it gets compressed, it loses its geometry. It loses its surface tension. So you can hear of water spoken about as living. Well, absolutely water is living. It's totally living, given that the majority of our being, we are water, all right? We are water and electricity. We're yin and yang, back to that Chinese medicine thing. Chinese medicine, there's only 2 seasons, summer and winter, right? Spring and fall, the transitions between those 2 seasons. So everything of a like kind has an opposite. So winter is yin and summer is yang. And fire is yang and water is yin. So fire and water, right? Electricity and water in our body is that complete system. And everything moves around that system. So this is what happens. The water comes in, should be having this type of geometry, and it has this type of geometry. It collapses, and then we lose the medicinal healing properties of water itself. And then water can either be a medicine or it can be a poison. And this, what we're going to speak about now, is how we can restructure water and also how we can increase the voltage of water. It's just another good example of that. The idea is we ask ourselves, how do we reestablish vortexian spin in our water so that we can get this water? Surface tension, it gives us more viscosity, it gives better cellular permeability, it conducts electricity better, it has more electrons available in it, it stimulates production of what's called biophotons in the body, and the research is just enormous on it. And our friend David, who couldn't join us today, he's a distributor of what I'm going to show you now, is that by the way, there are a number, all you have to do is Google structured water, right? And there are a number of ways to structure water, including they will actually have a jar, right? And then have marbles inside of it and pour water through the marbles and it creates a spin. And we are consummate researchers ourselves, and what I believe the best system out there that I know is called the Hydria System. And the man that invented this, he's very well respected in the water community, and he was, if you know the name Emoto, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, about water having memory. He was involved in on that research, and this gentleman has just completed 2 successful research projects where they took extremely toxic water, like almost black water, at a golf course, 2 golf courses, and they were able to use this in a bigger system, and completely within a matter of days, the water goes from black to clear. And so he is a few days away from signing $1 billion contract to take this system into Lake Okeechobee to begin to purify that, because the research is there that the system does that. What happens is when water loses its charge and it loses its structure, then it's almost like the soil. When we use chemicals on the soil, the plant loses its ability to have the ability to defend itself. Right? And so that what happens is when a water loses charge or loses its life or its vortex, then it becomes much more susceptible to viruses and to bacteria and toxins being contained in the water. And with this simple little device, that the research shows that it just eradicates that, and that a lot of the problems that we have in our water are corrected with it. Now, I do want to say that because we're neuroscientists, that water is incredibly important for our brain and our body. And so why is that, right? So the mitochondria make electricity, and they do, right? And mitochondria are bacteria living inside our cells, thousands of them in each cell. But they're bacteria. So what do we use chlorine in our water for, right? It's to kill bacteria in the water. But we drink that, and what is that doing to the mitochondria? Because they're bacteria, right? And then second to that is that fluoride, look, chlorine's easy to get out. Fluoride is harder to get out of the water. But there's so much evidence and research on what fluoride is a neurotoxin. It affects our brain, and it is one of the drivers relative to what's happening with the neurodegenerative conditions in the world right now. Okay. And so we'll talk about that at another elevated conversation. So, is that a question? Did I hear? A charge, yes. Yeah, absolutely. There's other ways. One way is to, what she's sharing with us is, so copper is a real special element. And you can have, this has numerous medical benefits to it. And one thing, clay does the same thing. You can, the clay and copper pots actually begin to restore the structure and the electricity that's in water. And there's so much research out there. I just want to encourage you all to look at that and define whatever the best system is for you. So this, I think fired, but raw. You're gonna fired is better than, because you get leakage. You get sweating that if we were in India and we'd have the same shape and making the puja and so forth. But clay in and of itself has very big medicinal properties, because why? It's from the earth, and that has these electromagnetic properties to begin to reestablish charge in our systems. So spin. So now we're talking about putting spin back into the water, and what I want to share about that in this system is, if you get this particular system, it's all type of fittings on it, and just have a plumber to come out and they'll install it under your sink, but they have whole house systems and so forth. But Teresa and I rent, and we live in one of these nice apartments downtown for the next period of time, and we run our office. So we didn't want to go to have that done. So what I do is I take water from Earthfare, and that water has reverse osmosis, which damages the water, but it cleans it up. So what I do is I just take these filters, and I'll run the water through this, and the water comes through here, and it goes out into that container, and it reestablishes spin in that. Yeah, that's what makes it. That's, so what makes this so unique? The gentleman's amazing. Where's that paper? If you have a chance to read it, you'll read a few paragraphs and you'll understand his level of thinking. It's really quite amazing. Yes, sir. We'll put that up there. This part of it that I'm doing now was going to be our friends David's show and tell, but we'll definitely put that up for you. So inside here are literally hundreds of stainless steel pellets or BBs that have been encoded in ceramic. Now the other thing that makes this really unique is that, remember that, who knows about Tesla? Right? You know the name Tesla, right? So the Tesla quote, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, just think in terms of frequency. And so what he does, this guy, he has some really expensive Tesla equipment, and he programs the ceramic beads with Tesla programming. And that gives this particular device a whole nother level of effectiveness, then that's how they can clean up pathogens in lakes, is because what happens is that the research shows that when we drink this water, it's not like it's isolated, right? This water becomes systemic in all the water of our body. So this water starts to change the water of our body, or this water in a lake can change that. And I would encourage you all to drink as purified and as good a water as you can. And this will even help if you don't. Yes, sir. No. This is just there's pellets in here. Oh, no, I'm going to get to Emoto. This gentleman, Emoto came to America because of this man. Yeah. All right. David Taylor's Eagle Research, and we'll have links to him at the end of it. Well, what happens is that there's a doc out there. His name is Pollock, and it's just really fascinating work. And Pollock shows that what can happen is that water can separate positive and negative charge in water, right? That electrons will go towards a particular surface, and where they go to a particular surface is here, and nothing else can be in that zone, and that's called the exclusion zone or easy water. Now, there was a picture that Teresa showed a little earlier, which was where the electrons are inside the cell. Mitochondria is making electrons from the inside of the cellular water, and the electrons are lining up inside the cell, and they're flowing across the cell membrane, and that creates electricity. So there are ways to create this phenomena inside our drinking water and also inside of our body within our cellular water. So now we're looking at how can we develop something to increase voltage and to increase charge within our body, or another way of how can we use water as an electron donor. So vortex, spin, chia seeds. So Pollock said that little fuzzy mucousy feeling around it, the chia seeds, is in fact an exclusion zone, and they can prove it. This is deep research that around the chia seeds is densely packed with electrons, and when we start using the chia seeds in our body, that gives us more electrons to be able to have that 1/3 that Teresa was talking about as far as our happiness and our resilience. There are other ways that, so sunlight, you can take water and put it in sunlight and get a similar effect, because water is in fact charging this from these various waves within sunlight. And the reason that vegetable juicing, I mean, we've got chemical nutrients in it, okay, I'm with you there, but remember we split the cabbage, and we're looking at the cabbage from two different places. And we're talking about electrical. And what happens with juicing, with vegetable juicing, what you're doing is you're putting in exclusion zone water or water that because the plant has its own charge, right? For example, pH, right? What does pH stand for? Potential hydrogen. It's all electrical. You think of it, you're talking about checking the pH of your urine or you got a garden and you want a pH, but it's talking about how many electrons are available. That's the translation of that. Yes, ma'am.
Something else to ask you. I've also heard that, to collect water, dirty water, and to make it clean so that it's usable, people plant canna plants in it.
Yeah, this I don't know. I mean, it's really, so there are other ways, and the name of the plant was?
Canna, you can get it at home because they sell it.
Santa plant.
C-A-N-N-A.
No.
They sell it here in the nurseries.
Oh, okay. Excellent. There are many ways and to introduce you to these concepts. Thank you. Well, Pollack's team, what they did is that they have been so successful in isolating exclusion zone as far as water and voltage, and we have a film of this. They can take two beakers of water, put them side by side, and begin to separate the water and the electrons flowing from one beaker to the other actually creates a water bridge of just freestanding water being driven by electrons. And the same principle of electrons flowing across a cellular membrane, because inside the cell is the exclusion zone, packed with electrons. So the more electrons we can get inside that cell, the more vital and what we have to perceive differently from. So the stronger the mitochondria, easy water acts like an antioxidant. And where am I? Summary. Yes, on time. Summary in the next film. Okay. So again, truth, simplicity, and love, right? So the simplest concepts. Field intervention, it's embedded in here in everything that we're sharing with you, from how we're having you to interact with each other and breathe. It's about field intervention and changing your field.
I read somewhere that it comes from Japan, from a Japanese researcher, to put water into a blue container and into the sun and then drink it.
Fantastic. Just fantastic. I mean, there's so many ways there, but do it. Whatever it is, find something and do it. That's the point, right? So mitochondria release electrons from water to create a bioelectricity. A body uses what you're seeing me, you're hearing me, you're breathing, you're thinking. It's all electrical. Cut the cabbage. Insulation prevents the uptake of electrons. Go barefooted or look into these grounding pads. And healing is voltage. So what that means is that we know that in a measure of electrons, that a cell has to have minus 25 millivolts, right? That just means that minus means electrons, right? And so then that's the negative charge. So it has to have basically 25 electrons, if you want to think of it that way. But what happens when there's a problem or an injury or an inflammation or a disease, the cell actually has to have more electrons available to heal. So in order for a cell to heal, it has to have minus 50 electrons. Okay, so if we don't have the electrons, where are we going to get it to heal? But then what happens when the cell cannot get the 50, it starts to go into a level of decline, much like our battery from our car fires our alternator, the charge comes back and it charges the battery and so forth. But after 25, what happens, the cell loses its ability to create charge. And that's how we can begin to think of healing as voltage, is how do we increase charge within our, let me just summary, within our body. So all space is filled with an electromagnetic waves that have pattern, that have spin, and have proportion. Proportion is known as the golden mean. All the way down to the DNA, it's the same as a galaxy, can plot it out. Water has spin, voltage, and memory. Chia seeds restore the electron potential within water. And then relative to that, the uber athletes have been known for a long time. You want to hydrate, you drink chia seeds because it creates such a level of hydration. But really, what does that mean? It means that it makes it makes the water more viscous. It means that the water can penetrate the cellular structure easier. Now, my story, again, so I'm 70. I go back, I remember as a child my father saying to me, son, you don't drink enough water. And all the way up until a few years ago, a few months ago, that was Teresa would just very lovingly, you got to drink more water, you got to drink more water. I had an aversion to water. I would be thirsty and I would want to eat a peanut butter, I know it's crazy, I would want to eat a peanut butter sandwich to quench my thirst. I had that for whatever that is. Well, there are some signs that you'll know if you're dehydrated. You have no thirst whatsoever. A dehydrated person has no thirst. All right? It's okay. So what happened is I'm into the water world, and I'm making this stuff, and I'm doing this, and I will tell you, I will drink an unquenchable thirst. Now, I have an unquenchable thirst. I'm not drinking it because I think it's healthy. I'm not drinking it because it tastes good. I'm not drinking it because Teresa is reminding me. I am telling you, I have an unquenchable thirst. I am that dehydrated in my life. And if it weren't for this, even better. It takes about 40 to 50 hours for Teresa and I to prepare an elevated conversation. And that with other events happening in our life, it was like, how are we going to do it? We were like 5 o'clock this morning, we were still putting together the presentation. But I didn't have time last week to make the water, and I stopped drinking. Only thing I did, I stopped drinking the water. And yesterday, when we got home from our office, I made our water, and now I have an unquenchable thirst, where a few days ago I had absolutely no thirst. And I can tell you the other things is that this is not an uncommon story. We hear this story from others. And my urine smells different, just right. And we have in our practice, we have 2 patients that are in stage 4. We're in stage 4 kidney failure, right? With their docs. This is right, and they came to us. One comes from Atlanta, and the other from Oklahoma. She comes from Oklahoma, stage 4, waiting for a kidney transplant. Right? She spends a few days with us. She goes back, sees her doc, and her doc says, well, not only did you not progress, but you're coming out of it. And the other gentleman has been with, and she calls us and tells us, right? And the other gentleman, he's been out of stage 4 for about a year now. And this, what I'm sharing with you, is a major, major player in the body's ability. The body's ability to heal itself is just to get proper water back in it. And this is, I'm going to close with this. It just takes a few minutes, but it's another, we felt another way to talk about the golden mean ratio.
I'm here to share a secret I learned at age 13, which transformed my life, my work as a Fortune 100 strategist. It catalyzed my self-education. This golden key to our genius and our connection is the golden ratio. Also known as phi, the divine proportion, the golden mean. It's nature's perfect proportion for bringing parts together in a greater whole. It manifests as the ratio 1.618 to 1. In the golden rectangle, the golden spiral and star, in the ratio between the numbers in the Fibonacci sequence. The golden ratio guides matter and the movement of energy in the universe, from the golden spirals of galaxies to hurricanes, ocean waves, flower petals, and nautilus shells. It is the pattern of life. Atoms dancing in golden spirals, the geometry of our DNA, the proportions of our body, our golden spiral heartbeat. Everywhere we find the golden ratio at play. It's the proportion of beauty which can be enhanced in our face with the golden ratio eyebrow sculpting system developed by Anastasia of Beverly Hills. It's present in structures ancient and modern. That's Grand Central Station, lower left. Geniuses from Da Vinci to Einstein were fascinated by the golden ratio. It's present in the works of Steve Jobs and Team Apple, the music of the Beatles, Mozart's symphonies, and the greatest video of all time, Michael Jackson's Thriller. Plays a key role in the Da Vinci Code, Kiefer Sutherland's new series, Touch, and in the current worldwide smash single, Gautier and Kimbra's Somebody That I Used to Know. Everyone carries a golden rectangle in their wallet. It's used in stock market forecasting in the Elliott wave and in the Millionaire's Map abundance growth system. Twitter and many great websites use it as a constant in their design. It's found throughout the world in great art. To take great pictures of the Da Vinci Touch, download the free app Camera Awesome. It's awesome. It's nature's secret nutrient for health and longevity. Peak performance is an outcome. That's me after winning a race a few weeks ago using the Fibonacci-based training system. It is a constant in our connection with one another and with all life. I'll close with a quote from William Blake. To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. Each of us carries an infinity of compassion, wisdom, and grace in the palms of our golden ratio hands. Now that you know the secret of this universal genius and connection activation factor, what gifts, what treasures will you discover and share to light the world for one and all? Thank you.
So let's take just a few minute break and come back and we'll finish up.